Well, that was easy.
When it comes to religious horror, some of the most cliched visuals come to mind, like an exorcism, demonic possession, guttural screeching, levitating bodies, and a lot of killings. That's why in today's video, we're gonna talk about some handpicked religious horror films that deviate from this cliche and try to bring a fresh take on this subgenre, rather than showing that same overused exorcising stunts. Today's list on top 12 religious horror films features some of the best movies with distinct styles and stories. But before we go in, let me give you a spoiler alert. All the films mentioned in the list are more than 1 or 2 decades old, so it's justified that there are heavy spoilers included in the list. Be careful about that or watch at your own risk. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
You left her alone to die! You'll never forgive you!
The Exorcist, 1973. In the early 1970s, The Exorcist introduced the world to the first ever exorcism horror film, which has since become one of the most influential themes in horror cinema. Based on William Peter Blatty's 1971 novel with the same name, The Exorcist, released in 1973, was something the audience wasn't ready for. The film, which explores faith, fear, and human psychology, combined with jump scares and horrific visuals, was the most frightening experience for the audience at the time. However, along with the harsh criticism for its portrayal of faith, the film was well received among critics and horror enthusiasts, earning its cult recognition. The story follows an actress, Chris MacNeil, and her daughter, Reagan, who was possessed by an evil demonic entity called Pazuzu. Chris sought help, asking Father Karras, a priest as well as a psychiatrist, to perform an exorcism on her daughter. Karras initially didn't want to believe that it was a possession, but after Reagan's constant blasphemous comments and inappropriate behavior, he eventually came to trust the existence of evil. Karras brought Father Merrin to perform an exorcism on Reagan, but Merrin, unable to fight the demonic force, died of a heart attack. The demon got out of Reagan's body and possessed Karras, who sacrificed his life to destroy the demon's presence temporarily. The film was soon developed into a franchise, where we came to learn Reagan's character development in Exorcist II, The Heretic, Karras' entrapment in a psychiatric ward in Exorcist III, and Pazuzu's origin in the prequels, where Merrin fought with a demon in an African country long before it possessed Reagan. The Exorcist surely started the trend of demonic possession in horror films, but it was way ahead of its time to talk about how human beings deal with the internal battle of faith versus reason.
What have you done to it?
Rosemary's Baby, 1968. Roman Polanski's 1968 horror classic, Rosemary's Baby, first introduced us to the idea of how childbirth can take a psychological toll on women. Rosemary's Baby depicts a ritualistic horror helping in the birth of evil. A young couple, Rosemary and Guy Woodhouse, move into an old apartment where Rosemary becomes pregnant, and ever since, strange occurrences have taken place in the house, starting from the mysterious death of a woman to weird pregnancy symptoms arising in Rosemary. The vibe around her begins to get suspiciously ominous. Soon, a coven of witches and a cult that worships Satan are revealed. Turns out, Rosemary's husband, Guy, is also a member of this cult. Eventually, the film ends with Rosemary giving birth to Satan's child, but the child's appearance was left ambiguous to the audience. Her reaction upon seeing her child, and the monstrous eyes of the newborn shown at the end of the film, were signs that evil had already triumphed, and there was no way out for Rosemary. Rosemary's Baby is one of the earliest religious horror films, but without the ideas of exorcism and possession. Rather, it talked about how power dynamics play in religion, and extreme devotion makes people blind, causing them to harm each other. Apart from just a religious point of view, the film also focuses on how childbirth can be psychologically intense for a woman, who experiences all kinds of bodily changes during this time that often brings immense emotional turmoil. The Omen, 1976. After The Exorcist came out in 1973, another influential horror franchise was in the making. In 1976, Richard Donner's The Omen brought about his fresh take on religious horror. While The Exorcist portrayed a little child getting possessed by a demon, and Rosemary's Baby showed how evil was born, The Omen follows the story of a baby boy, born as the son of Satan, and how he unleashes the difficulties upon the innocent family that raised him. An American diplomat, Mr. Robert Thorne, and his wife, Catherine, were having a baby. As the newborn couldn't survive, Mr. Thorne hid the fact from his wife and decided to adopt a baby boy, as advised by Father Spiletto. Catherine raises the boy, knowing that he was her own child, but the little boy, Damien, wasn't a normal kid. He was the Antichrist, or the child of Satan. Right upon his arrival in the family, horrific incidents began to take place. Robert and his wife eventually come to know about Damien's true identity and took him to the church for a ritual killing, but both of them were killed in the process. In the next sequels, Damien grew up to become a corrupted individual who gradually accepted his true nature as the Antichrist. In the next sequels, Damien, Omen 2, Omen 3, The Final Conflict, and Omen 4 Awakening, the story becomes increasingly nuanced, as not only Damien, but also a new Antichrist is born in the form of a little girl. Finally, in 2024, The First Omen showcased the prequel to the 1976 film, depicting the events that led to the birth of the first Antichrist, Damien Thorne. If David Seltzer and Richard Donner's storytelling was the soul of the story, Jerry Goldsmith's haunting background score became the heartbeat of the film, proving that a horror film is incomplete without a background score that creates tension within the audience. The Omen also deals with how human minds constantly try to find logic in the ecosystem they live in, but some events go beyond any logical explanation. The fear sometimes becomes stronger than the faith itself, and that's when humans become weak, allowing the negative energies to take over them. Hereditary, 2018. Can't thank A24 enough for giving us such horror masterpieces one after another, like Ari Aster's two most prominent films at the early stage of his filmmaking career, Midsommar and Hereditary. The two of them are equally horrifying and contemplative, focusing on ritualistic horror. However, while Midsommar deals with a great deal of gore, Hereditary employs a minimalist approach to horror, making it one of the best that has ever existed. The story follows Annie, who lost her mother, a cult leader who worshipped the demon called Paimon. On top of that, Annie became even more grief-stricken when her little daughter, Charlie, died in a horrific car accident. Her elder son, Peter, who was guilty of Charlie's death, began to act strangely on some occasions. Annie's husband was eventually killed when Annie was trying to prevent the cult's sinister impacts on her family. Still, without her knowledge, she kept following the supposed rules of the cult. Turns out that Paimon had cursed their bloodline for a long time, and now Peter became the ultimate host for the demon, leading Annie to worship him as the king. While religious phenomenon surely play a vital role in the movie, it also depicts how generational trauma affects families and ruins their peaceful bonding with each other. Religious fear has a direct link with the psychological state of human beings. For example, although Peter was destined to become the demon king Paimon, his indirect involvement in Charlie's death became the ultimate reason why he became the perfect host for Paimon. When Hereditary came out, it instantly garnered a lot of attention due to its unique take on horror. However, over the years, it received mixed reviews, with some calling it a masterpiece while others bashed it for no apparent reason. However, despite being one of Ari Aster's earliest works, it was way better than Beau is Afraid or the recently released Eddington. Hereditary surely had something new, but with the ambiguous treatment of horror, the film remained an outcast for a lot of people. The Wailing, 2016. Written and directed by Na Hong-jin, The Wailing tells the story of a rural Korean village where a series of murders took place under mysterious circumstances. A police officer named Jong-gu tried to find what's leading to these murders and the curse that's been affecting the village for so long. Soon, he found out that a mysterious Japanese man was taking shelter in their town, and since his arrival, these eerie and sinister events started happening. Jong-gu arranged for a village shaman to perform rituals to get rid of any lingering spirits, but that just made the matter even worse than before. Jong-goo's daughter Hyo-jin fell ill, and he couldn't save her at the end. Jong-goo's people beat the Japanese man, who later got hit by a vehicle before his body was chucked off the cliff. At the concluding scene of the film, the Japanese stranger was revealed to be the vessel for the demonic entity affecting the entire village all along. Religious differences and xenophobia have been recurring themes for the Wailing, but the most interesting aspect of the film is how the line between good and evil blurs by the end of it. Ultimately, you cannot pinpoint the actual evil from the story, as almost everyone in the village was the victim of religious fear, causing hate and violence amongst each other. Martyrs, 2008. Written and directed by Pascal Laugier, Martyrs is one of the new French extreme horror films that attempts to offer a unique perspective on faith and fear. The story follows Lucy, a young woman who escaped from a torture house where she was brutally abused for a long time. Even though she managed to escape that place, she began to experience horrific visions of a mutilated woman trying to harm her. Her friend and guide, Anna, grew up with her in a facility where she was sheltered. However, after growing up, Lucy wanted to take revenge, and Anna helped her in that endeavor. Lucy managed to kill the family that had brutally tortured her in the first place, but after that, she committed suicide by slitting her throat, leaving Anna alone. Anna then went on to discover a cellar hidden in the house, where she found the dark secrets of a cult torturing young women to make them martyrs or transcendental beings who could experience the afterlife. They captured Anna and inflicted torture upon her until she reached a point where she lingered between life and death. However, their mission proved to be futile when Anna whispered something to their cult leader's ears before taking her last breath. The extreme religious ideologies led the cult to believe in the existence of the afterlife, where they could reach after leaving their mortal bodies. Still, Anna's revelation proved that there was nothing but a void after death. The film explores deep psychological trauma caused by extreme torture, as well as the consequences of blind faith.
Well, that was easy.
Saint Maud, 2019. Saint Maud is a hard-hitting portrayal of how religion can be widely misleading and faith misinterpreted by some individuals with a narrow-minded perspective. Written and directed by Rose Glass, Saint Maud follows the story of a former nurse, Katie, who failed to save the life of her patient. Overridden by guilt, she turned to religion, changing her name to Maud. She was assigned to take care of a terminal patient named Amanda, who was romantically involved with a woman. Maud's orthodox mentality and extreme devotion to religious ideologies led her to feel uncomfortable with Amanda's lifestyle. Amanda's friends and others constantly mocked Maud for her outdated thinking, causing her to spiral into isolation and madness. Overpowered by her prejudiced thinking and delusion, she attacked Amanda, stabbing her to death. In the end, Maud realized that she had done God's job to punish the evil and set herself on fire, thinking that her death was glorious. However, God didn't descend on earth to take her soul. Rather, in reality, she died a painful death. The Witch, 2015. Set in the 1630s in New England, a Puritan family was banished from their settlement and began living on the outskirts near a dark forest, where strange occurrences began to occur in their household. A mysterious black goat resembling a satanic figure soon became the elder daughter of the family, Thomason's pet. Thomason's parents soon started to accuse her of being the witch, who eventually got lured by Black Philip, revealing himself to be the actual devil who tempted her to become his slave and get a luxurious lifestyle in return. In the end, after Thomason's parents were killed and her siblings disappeared, she left her cottage and joined the witches in the woods. Robert Eggers' The Witch doesn't tell a story relying on practical effects or jump scares. Still, a simple, minimalist yet gothic atmosphere envelops the film, presenting one of the most dreadful settings for a horror film. This film deals with the medieval Puritan ideologies and their orthodox view on life, as well as a constant sense of paranoia in the family, making it a Faustian bargain for the devil.
Don't, please!
Frailty, 2001. Bill Paxton's directorial debut, Frailty follows the story of two brothers, Adam and Fenton Meeks, raised by their psychopathic father who believes that he's been given the job to cleanse demonic presence from human beings by punishing them with death. Their father shows them how he kills the innocent people whom he believes are possessed by evil. The religious delusions are the strongest theme in the film, showing how people's misleading thoughts about faith lead them to commit violence. Frailty becomes an unusual horror that doesn't deal with demons or ghosts, but showcases how evil can reside in humans if they're not properly handled. Especially, a child's future is in their parents' hands, just as Fenton and Adam's responsibility was upon their father, who failed to carry it out. Instead, his internal hatred for people was successfully passed on to his son, Adam. However, Fenton, who had some sense of empathy in him, decided to go against his father. Fenton attacked his father to put an end to the violence, but Adam took his revenge by killing Fenton. The final twist of the film reveals that the narrator of the story, whom we believe to be Fenton, was actually Adam, who had been carrying out his father's job, killing people to do what he believed to be God's work. He even killed the FBI investigator Doyle after taking him to the graveyard. Frailty ended on a bleak note, adopting a more cynical viewpoint rather than a happy ending. It also shows how hard it is to spot the evil hidden beneath a facade of a good person. The Last Exorcism, 2010. Reverend Cotton Marcus no longer believes in religion, and therefore, he now earns a living by performing fake exorcisms to strengthen his disbelief in God as well as in evil. One day, two filmmakers, Daniel and Iris, join Marcus when a farmer calls him to exorcise his daughter, Nell, who has been showing some eerie symptoms likely of being possessed by a demon. Marcus inspects Nell and declares that she has been possessed by a demon named Abalam, who feeds upon the innocent souls. However, when both Marcus and the filmmaker duo think that this was just a psychological issue Nell has been suffering from, she proves them wrong by exhibiting unusual behavior, including painting unsettling pictures and becoming pregnant mysteriously. This 2010 exorcism horror is a found footage film shot in a documentary style. The ending of the film follows the typical treatment of a found footage horror, where there is no escape from the evil. Nell, at the end of the film, overpowered by the evil demon, kills both these filmmakers, while Marcus's ultimate fate remains ambiguous. However, it was evident in the movie that Nell's gradual transformation into the monster helps restore Cotton Marcus's faith. The Last Exorcism, being a found footage horror, keeps us on the edge with its too realistic treatment, blurring the line between fiction and reality. The constant fear of the unknown makes it one of the influential horror films in the found footage genre, as horrific as The Blair Witch Project or The Medium. Apostle, 2018. Gareth Evans wrote and directed the 2018 folk horror Apostle, which also shows religious violence from a different angle. Starring Dan Stevens in the lead, the film follows a former missionary, Thomas Richardson, who sets out on his mission to find his sister, Jennifer, kidnapped by a cult from a Welsh island. Posing as one of the members of the cult, Thomas arrives at the island. He finds out some of the darkest secrets, like their deity, who is rooted in grass, the horrific human sacrifices, and the forced abortions that the cult has been carrying out ever since. As Thomas manages to free the goddess, he sacrifices himself in his pursuit to help his sister escape the island. However, after Thomas's sacrifice, his body merges with the grass on the earth, turning him into a godlike figure, the next protector of the island. Apostle deals with heavy and intense atmospheric horror, owing to the haunting background score of the film. Sometimes, even silence works the best to keep the atmospheric dread alive in the movie. Although slow-paced, the storytelling is engaging, and with patience, the film really brings out some unusual and scary moments that will surely frighten you to the core. Stigmata, 1999. Last but not least, Stigmata is another entry in the list. Written by Tom Lazarus and Rick Ramage, Rupert Wainwright's film explores how churches have distorted religious ideologies by adhering to their own institutional mindset. At the same time, the actual gospel speaks about God's existence in every corner of the world. It is through love and compassion for humanity that one can attain God. The film follows a young woman named Frankie, who wears a rosary that her mother has gifted her. But since the day she started wearing it, mysterious wounds began to appear in her hands, legs, and head, just in the same way Jesus Christ received the stigmata. Meanwhile, a priest-scientist, Andrew Kiernan, has been working on the Vatican's sacred congregation while investigating the mysterious stigmata wounds on Frankie. It was revealed that Father Alameda, a Brazilian priest, had previously received the stigmata wound just like Frankie, causing him to commit suicide. Father Alameda discovered a controversial Gospel of Thomas that speaks about God's infinite presence in every element of the world. The Gospel of Thomas, according to Alameda, was the truest message from Jesus Christ, but the church was against it. They knew that if people started to believe that God exists in everyone, they wouldn't go to church anymore. That's why these Gospels have been hidden from sight. Frankie was actually saved by Andrew, who wanted to excavate the Gospels to spread the word to everyone, but the church didn't let that happen. Slightly deviating from what religious horror films usually portray, Stigmata addresses a hard-hitting issue: God's actual message on love and compassion versus the man-made obsession with orthodox religion. Marvelous verdict. On that note, our video is almost over. We have discussed the top 12 picks of religious horror films, some of which are extremely popular, while others are criminally underrated. Now, if you love the video, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel, as well as leave a comment to let us know your favorite religious horror film. Until then, goodbye and see ya.